Welcome back to the deep dive. It is Wednesday, February 25th, 2026. And I mean, if you are listening to this right now, the sun has just come up on what feels like a very, very different country than the one we were living in just 12 months ago. I mean, the vibe shift is palpable.
It really is. We're sitting here the morning after President Donald Trump's State of the Union address, and usually, let's be honest, we come into these deep dives with a bit of skepticism. We usually have to parse through a lot of political fluff, right? We hope to do this, and we might do that just to get to a kernel of substance. But today, the stack of notes I have here, it is heavy. It is dense with data.
It's heavy. And the mood. We watched it live last night. The energy in that chamber wasn't just the usual polite applause or the partisan bickering we've grown so used to over the last few years. It was electric. You had chanting, you had tears, you had genuine laughter. But our job today isn't to review the performance or the theater of it all. Our job is to review the receipts.
Exactly. The president called this a turnaround for the ages. That is the headline claim. And our mission for this deep dive, and we were going to take our time with this, we were going really deep, is to audit that claim. We are going to look at the raw numbers on the economy, the specific logistics of the border closure, the geopolitical shifts with energy, and the cultural reset he outlined. Because if these numbers are real, and he was very specific, which usually means he's inviting people to fact-check him, then we are looking at a historic shift.
A turnaround for the ages. That is a massive claim. But when you start unpacking what we heard last night, the optimism is just jumping off the page. It's hard to argue with the vibe of it. But before we get to the golden age, let's set the scene. February 2026. Where were we exactly 1 year ago? Because the president started his speech by setting that baseline.
Right. Context is everything here. You simply cannot appreciate the golden age narrative without remembering the crisis narrative that preceded it. 12 months ago, the source text reminds us the nation was, in the president's words, teetering. We have to remember the feeling of early 2025. We had an economy that was stagnant inflation that felt sticky and permanent, a border that was effectively an open door, and a general sense of global chaos.
I remember the grocery store runs from a year ago vividly. You'd look at a carton of eggs or a pound of butter and just wince. It wasn't just the price, it was the feeling that you were losing ground every single time you swiped your card. It was that pit in your stomach.
That's the misery index concept in real life. And the core argument of this speech, the thesis statement, if you will, is that America First policies aren't just theoretical slogans or campaign rhetoric. They are a rapid response mechanism. The argument is that by prioritizing national interest over global ideology, you can fix complex problems much, much faster than the so-called experts said was possible.
And that brings us to the first and probably the most critical pillar of this speech, the economic engine. He said it's roaring back. Now, roaring is a buzzword. Politicians love it. But he backed it up with a specific number on inflation that made me do a double take. 1.7%.
1.7% for the last 3 months of 2025. This is a massive deal. For the listeners who aren't economists, let's break down why that specific number matters. The Federal Reserve usually targets 2% as a healthy rate. When you are at 1.7% specifically for core inflation, you have effectively stabilized the purchasing power of the dollar. You have stopped the bleeding.
So we aren't just slowing down the decline. The wound is healed. We are back to stability.
Precisely. And he didn't shy away from the comparison either. He reminded the chamber that the previous administration presided over the worst inflation in the history of our country. Now, historians might debate the exact time frame of history, but the feeling of it was absolutely historic for anyone living through it. But here's the insight I want to drill into. How did we get from record highs to 1.7% so fast? Because the experts told us disinflation would take years.
He gave us the answer in 3 famous words. Drill, baby, drill.
Energy. It always comes back to energy. Energy is the universal input cost. It costs energy to grow food, to transport clothes, to build houses, to run servers. If you lower the cost of energy, you lower the cost of everything. It is the master key to the economy.
And the drop in gas prices is the most visible proof of this. He mentioned that under the predecessor, gas peaked at over $6 a gallon in some states. $6! I remember seeing those signs. It felt like a penalty for driving to work. It felt like you were being punished for having a commute.
It was a tax on mobility. It was a tax on the working class. But look at the scoreboard now. He reported gas is below $2.30 a gallon in most states. And he threw in this anecdote about being in Iowa just a few weeks ago and seeing it at $1.85.
$1.85. I haven't seen a number starting with a 1 on a gas station sign in I can't even tell you how long. That feels like time travel. It feels like we stepped into a DeLorean and went back to a better time.
It effectively is time travel. It's a return to a pre-crisis baseline. But let's look at the how. It wasn't magic. It wasn't luck. It was a supply-side shock. American oil production is up by more than 600,000 barrels a day. Natural gas is at an all-time high. When you flood the market with supply, the price crashes. It is economics 101, but seeing it applied so aggressively is rare in modern politics.
It's a difference between restricting your own resources and unleashing them. But there was a curveball in the energy section, a plot twist I didn't see coming. Venezuela?
Yes. This is a fascinating bit of geopolitical pragmatism. He called Venezuela a new friend and partner.
Which is wild, considering where we were diplomatically with them for years. We were talking sanctions, regime change, the works. And now they are partners.
It is a complete 180. But look at the result. We received more than 80 million barrels of oil from them. This is the art of the deal in action on a global stage. The president's philosophy has always been transactional rather than ideological. He doesn't care if the Venezuelan government aligns with us on every abstract value. He cares if they have oil that can lower the price for American moms and dads.
So the logic is, you have oil, we want cheap gas, let's make a deal. It cuts through all the diplomatic noise.
Exactly. And by bringing that Venezuelan heavy crude into our refineries, which are specifically built to process that type of oil, by the way we maximized our refining capacity, that efficiency is what gets you to $1.85 in Iowa. It's a masterclass in supply chain leverage. It turns out having a businessman in charge of the negotiations actually yields business-friendly results.
Who would have thought? Okay, so energy costs are down, which brings inflation down. That stabilizes the wallet. But you can't have a boom without capital. You need money moving. And this next number, I had to reread the transcript to make sure I wasn't saying things. $18 trillion.
The investment tsunami. That's what he called it.
He compared the previous 4 years to his first 12 months. Previous administration, less than $1 trillion in new investment. The last 12 months, over $18 trillion. That sounds like an impossible jump. What explains that magnitude of money moving that quickly?
It's the safe harbor effect combined with aggressive deregulation. Capital is cowardly. I say that as a neutral observer of markets. Money is scared. It runs away from uncertainty, it runs away from high taxes, and it runs away from heavy regulation. It runs toward stability and profit. When the administration started slashing what he called job-killing regulations and signaled that taxes were staying low, the global markets reacted instantly.
So this isn't just American money, this isn't just companies here reinvesting.
Now, this is global capital. This is the world speaking. Sovereign wealth funds, foreign corporations, private equity, they looked at the map of the world. Europe is struggling with stagnation. Asia has its own demographic and debt issues. And then there is the USA screaming we are open for business. That $18 trillion is the world betting on the American comeback. They're voting with their wallets.
And that bet is paying off in the stock market. The Dow Jones broke 50,000.
4 years ahead of schedule, according to the Wall Street projections.
And the S&P hit 7,000. Now, I know the criticism here. People always say the stock market isn't the economy. That's just for the rich. That's for the guys in the suits. But the president anticipated that pushback. He looked right at the camera and talked about 401ks.
This is the wealth effect. He noted that the average 401k balance is up by at least $30,000. That is a tangible number for a middle-class family. That isn't abstract. That's a new car or a year of college tuition or just peace of mind knowing you aren't going to die broke. When people see their retirement accounts swell, they feel richer. When they feel richer, they spend more. It creates a virtuous cycle.
It's confidence. That's the currency of the realm. If you think tomorrow is going to be better than today, you invest, you spend, you hire. If you think tomorrow is going to be worse, you hoard. And clearly people think tomorrow is going to be better.
And the data supports that belief.
Speaking of keeping more of your money, we have to talk about taxes. He brought up the great big beautiful bill. I love the branding.
To tax cuts. And politically, he framed this brilliantly. He pointed out that every single Democrat voted against it. He drew a sharp line. They wanted to take your money. I wanted you to keep it. It's a simple binary choice.
And the specifics are very targeted to the working class. This wasn't just corporate rate cuts. Let's look at the list. No tax on tips.
A huge win for service workers. Think about waitresses, bartenders, barbers, caddies. That is immediate cash flow. That is money that goes right into the local economy.
No tax on overtime.
This is the one I find most interesting economically. It changes the incentive structure for labor. If you know that your 41st hour of work is going to be tax-free, you are far more likely to raise your hand for that shift. It solves labor shortages by incentivizing existing workers to work more rather than relying on mass immigration to fill those slots. It's a very clever America First labor policy. It rewards the grinder.
And finally, no tax on Social Security for seniors.
Protecting the fixed income demographic. It's populism mixed with supply-side economics. Put money into people's pockets, and they will drive the economy. The theory is that the government is a bad allocator of capital, and the individual is a good allocator. So give the money back to the individual.
So if we sum up the economic pillar, energy is cheap, investment is flooding, and the market is up and taxes are hit. It is a very strong argument for a golden age. It feels like the economic engine has been rebuilt and supercharged.
It has. And the results. 2.4 million people off food stamps, 100% private sector job creation. Those aren't just numbers. Those are lives changed. That is dignity restored.
And there is always a but. You can have a rich country, but if it isn't a safe country, it doesn't matter if you have money in your pocket, but you're scared to walk down the street. Are you really free?
That was the pivot to the second pillar. Security and sovereignty. And specifically the border.
The border. This was the moment in the speech where I think a lot of jaws hit the floor. We have spent years hearing about millions of people crossing, invasions, crisis, chaos. We've seen the footage. And then he drops a single statistic.
In the past 9 months, 0 illegal aliens have been admitted to the United States.
0.
0.
Is that, I mean, from a logistical standpoint, how is that even possible? It sounds like hyperbole.
It seems impossible because we are used to the dysfunction. We became conditioned to accept chaos as the norm. But the president's argument is that the border wasn't uncontrollable. It was simply uncontrolled. It was a choice. When you combine physical barriers like the wall with a strict remain in Mexico policy and you actually enforce the deportation laws, the incentive structure collapses.
You turn off the magnet.
Exactly. If potential migrants know there is a 100% chance they will be turned back and down, they stop coming. The cartels stop selling the tickets because the service can't be delivered. The business model of human smuggling breaks down. The zero statistic is the result of applying maximum friction to illegal entry. It's the result of actually wanting to solve the problem.
And the downstream effect of that isn't just about immigration numbers or demographics. It's about the drugs, fentanyl.
He cited a 56% drop in the flow of fentanyl. That is a supply chain disruption. You disrupt the mule routes, you disrupt the supply.
And that connects to the crime rates. This was another historic comparison that really stuck with me. He said the murder rate saw the single largest decline in recorded history. He went all the way back to the year 1900 to find a comparison.
1900. Think about that. That is before the FBI existed. That is a completely different world. To say we are returning to that level of safety is a profound claim. It challenges the modern assumption that crime is just part of city life. He's saying no crime is a policy choice. And we chose to stop it.
He credited the stacked recruitment in police and military for this too, which we will get to in a bit. But it's clear the message is law and order works. It's not complicated. You arrest the bad guys, you secure the border, and safety returns.
Sounds like common sense, doesn't it?
It really does. But he didn't stop at just the physical border. He wants to secure the ballot box too, the Save America Act.
This is the sovereignty piece. The philosophy is the first duty of the American government is to protect American citizens. So the Save America Act is designed to ensure only citizens vote.
And he used the voter ID argument, which frankly resonates with a lot of people. It's hard to argue against the logic he laid out.
It's the common sense test. He listed it out.
Yeah.
You need an ID to drive, to buy alcohol, to get on a plane, to cash a check, to rent a hotel room. So why wouldn't you need it to vote? He called voting the greatest privilege of them all. It frames the opposition as being unreasonable. If you need an ID to buy a beer, why is it suppression to need one to pick the president?
It highlights the absurdity of the opposing argument. And he pointed out the political gamesmanship. He mentioned the snowstorm crisis where Democrats cut funding for Homeland Security.
Right. He's painting a picture of adults versus children. He's saying we are trying to secure the country, we're trying to stop the drugs, and they are playing budget games during a blizzard. It reinforces his narrative that his administration is the only thing standing between order and chaos.
Order versus chaos. That really is the theme here. Okay, let's move to the kitchen table. Because a secure border and a high stock market are great, but people live their lives in the details. The price of butter, the cost of medicine, the future of their kids.
He spent a surprising amount of time on these daily costs. He didn't just stay at the macro level. He listed chicken, butter, fruit, rent. He acknowledged that these costs are down by a lot, validating the listener's daily experience. It connects the big policy to the shopping cart.
But the healthcare section, this was where the populist trumpet really sounded. He went after the insurance companies and big pharma with the sledgehammer.
This is where Trump disrupts the traditional Republican-Democrat divide. A traditional Republican might defend the free market of insurance companies. Trump said, no, we are going to end payments to big insurance companies and give that money to the people. It's a very populist stance.
Transparent.
Maximum price transparency. But the most favored nation status for drugs is the real game changer here.
I want to make sure everyone understands this because it sounds technical, but it's actually really simple. Break down most favored nation for us.
Okay, so for decades, the United States has effectively subsidized the world's pharmaceutical research. A drug company develops a pill. They sell it in France for $10 because the French government sets a price cap. They sell it in Canada for $12, but in the U.S., they sell it for $500 because they can. And that $500 profit margin pays for the R&D that the whole world benefits from.
So we were the suckers paying full price while the rest of the world used a coupon. We were being ripped off.
Exactly. The most favored nation executive order says the United States government will not pay 1 cent more than the lowest price paid by any other industrialized nation. If France pays $10, Medicare pays $10.
That forces the drug companies to either raise prices on the rest of the world or lower them for us.
And the result, as he reported, is that prices are crashing. It's fairness. It's America First applied to the pharmacy counter. Why should an American senior citizen subsidize a European socialist healthcare system? The president says they shouldn't.
I love that. America First at the pharmacy. Now let's talk about the future, because one of the most surprising announcements, and something that wasn't really leaked beforehand, was the Trump accounts.
This is a legacy play. This is thinking 20 years down the road.
The proposal is a tax-free investment account for every American child, 25 million kids.
Pre-funded by the Treasury and private donations. He shouted out Michael and Susan Dell for a $6.25 billion donation.
Yeah.
That is a staggering amount of philanthropy.
$6.25 billion. That's not a check you write lightly. That is a serious commitment.
No. And the mechanics of this are powerful. If you give a child a nest egg at age 5 or age 10, and you let it sit in the market, which we just established is booming, compounding at 7 or 8% by the time that kid is 25, they have real capital. They have down payment on a house. They have startup money for a business.
It turns every American child into a capitalist. It gives them a stake in the game.
Stakeholder capitalism. It's an antidote to socialism. If everyone owns a piece of the pie, nobody wants to burn down the bakery. It aligns the interests of the individual with the success of the nation's economy.
And he balanced that financial ambition with compassion for the most vulnerable, the adoption and foster care segment.
Highlighting Melania Trump's work with the Foster Youth to Independence Initiative. This is a group that is often invisible. Kids aging out of the system at 18 with no family and no support. The executive order he signed gives them a bridge. It adds a layer of heart to this speech. It says we're getting rich, yes, but we aren't forgetting the orphans. It shows a complete vision of society.
It paints a picture of a society that is functioning on all cylinders. Wealth, safety, and compassion. But the ultimate guarantor of all of that, the military.
Peace through strength. It's the Reagan Doctrine amplified.
He asked for and got $1 trillion budget.
$1 trillion. That is a deterrent. The strategy is simple. You build a military so overwhelmingly lethal, so technologically advanced, that no adversary dares to test you. You win the war by never having to fight it.
But you need people to operate that $1 trillion of gear. And remember the recruitment crisis. A few years ago, nobody wanted to join. The Army was missing targets by the thousands. It was a crisis of confidence.
It was a morale crisis. And he claims that is solved. All branches are setting records. Why? He argues it's the restoration of pride. The woke stuff is gone, the social engineering is gone, the mission is clear, and the country's behind them.
And the warrior dividend probably helps too.
Money always helps. A $1,776 bonus for service members.
I see what he did there with the number.
$1,776. It's symbolic, but it's also cash. And note where he said the money came from, tariffs. He is taking money from foreign trade and giving it directly to the troops. It's a very tight nationalistic feedback loop. We tax foreign goods to pay our defenders. It's poetic in a policy sense.
Speaking of troops and heroes, the gallery, the people sitting in the balcony with the First Lady. This is a State of the Union tradition. But the selection this year told a very specific story. It wasn't random.
It was a curated narrative of the American character.
Mm-hmm.
You had the winner, the veteran, and the savior.
Let's start with the winner, the U.S. men's Olympic hockey team.
Gold medalists.
Yeah.
Beating Canada in overtime. That is a story everyone loves. It triggers that Miracle on Ice nostalgia.
And the president was having fun with this. He was cracking jokes about Connor Hellebuck, the goalie. 46 saves.
46 saves is insane. That is a brick wall.
He said, I asked him if that save was luck or practice, and he wouldn't tell me. And then he joked about taking a vote on giving him the Medal of Freedom right there. It showed a loose, confident president. He wasn't reading a script. He was holding court.
And the line, we're winning so much, we're winning too much, it's a callback to his old campaign promises. But now he has the gold medal to prove it. He's telling the country, see, I told you we'd start winning again.
Then he pivoted to the veteran, Buddy Taggart, 100 years old.
This was the bridge to history. A World War II vet who liberated an internment camp in the Philippines. Buddy represents the spirit of 1776 living in the 20th and 21st centuries. By having him there looking forward to the 250th birthday, the president is drawing a timeline of heroism that stretches from the founding to today. It validates the current moment by connecting it to the greatest generation.
And finally, the savior, the future of heroism, Scott Ruskin and Milla Kate, the flood rescue in Texas.
This was the emotional peak. The story of the Coast Guard swimmer dropping from a helicopter into raging floodwaters to save an 11-year-old girl. The detail he shared that she was praying to God because she thought she was going to die.
And Scott Ruskin saved her. And 163 other people?
Extraordinary heroism.
Yeah.
Awarding him the Legion of Merit right there in the chamber, it unifies the room. You can't hate the guy who just saved a little girl. It reminds the listener that for all the policy and money, the country is built on individuals who will risk their lives for strangers. It grounds the golden age in human character, not just GDP.
It was a powerful moment. And it leads us perfectly into the final section of the speech, the culture. Because this golden age isn't just about economics, it's about how we see ourselves. It's about the soul of the nation.
He was very explicit about the cultural reset. He talked about ending DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Which has been a battleground for years.
He framed it not as exclusion, but as a return to merit. The idea that the only thing that matters is how good you are, not what group you belong to. It's a rejection of identity politics in favor of national identity. E pluribus unum, out of many one.
And that national identity is about to be on the biggest stage possible. We are the sports superpower.
This is a massive flex, hosting the 2026 World Cup, hosting the 2028 Summer Olympics in Los Angeles.
He couldn't resist taking credit. I got them both in my first term.
He has a point. He was the one who negotiated those bids. Yeah. And his comment about being disappointed he wouldn't be president for them, but then strange things happened. That's that wink to the audience. He knows how to work the room. But it serves a purpose. It reminds people that he has been building this legacy for a long time.
But there was a serious promise attached to the Olympics. He promised Los Angeles would be safe.
That is a bold promise.
Yeah.
LA has had its struggles with crime and homelessness, but he pointed to Washington, D.C. He said D.C. is now one of the safest cities in the country.
Which is true. The crime stats in D.C. have plummeted since the federal takeover of safety.
So his argument is, I cleaned up the Capitol, I can clean up L.A. It gives credibility to the promise. If you can turn D.C. into a fortress of safety, why not L.A.? He is staking his reputation on the Olympics being a showcase of a safe, clean America.
And all of this, the sports, the safety, the economy, the culture, it's all building up to one specific date, July 4th, 2026.
The semi-quincentennial.
250 years.
That is a mouthful of a word, but it sounds momentous.
It is. But it's the finish line for this turnaround. The president's vision is that on that day when the fireworks go off, America won't be a nation in decline. It won't be a nation apologizing for its history. It will be a nation at its absolute peak. Bigger, better, richer, and stronger.
And he's got Vice President Vance focused on cleaning out the government, the war on fraud, to make sure the institution is worthy of the celebration.
It's the final sweep. Efficient, honest government serving a prosperous people. It's the finishing touch on the renovation. So let's bring this all in for a landing. We have covered a lot of ground. We've looked at the inflation drop, the $1.85 gas, the $18 trillion investment, the secure border, the medical pricing, the military resurgence. When you step back and look at the whole picture, what is the takeaway?
The takeaway is that the source text, the reality presented in this speech, validates a specific worldview. It argues that the problems of the last few years were not complex systemic failures that required decades of study. They were failures of will. They were failures of leadership.
That's the aha moment for me. We were told inflation was transitory or unavoidable. We were told the border was impossible to seal. We were told crime was societal.
And the president is standing there saying false. The solution to high gas prices was to drill. The solution to the border was to close it. The solution to crime was to enforce the law. It turns out, according to this narrative, that American common sense was the answer all along. The Republican approach of America First has been vindicated by the data. The scorecard says they were right.
It really challenges you to rethink what is possible. It breaks the learned helplessness we had as a country. If you can fix this much in 12 months, what happens next?
That's the exciting part. We are only 1 year into this term. If the trajectory holds, if the compounding interest on those Trump accounts kicks in, if the investment keeps flowing, the golden age might not just be a political slogan. It might be the reality we are living in for the next decade. We might be looking at a new American century.
The president ended by saying, "Our destiny is written by the hand of Providence." It's a heady sentiment. It implies that this comeback was meant to be. But looking at the scorecard today, it's hard not to feel a little bit of that optimism. It's hard not to feel like maybe, just maybe, the best days really are ahead.
It's unimaginable how far we've come in just 365 days. And I think we are all ready for the party on July 4th.
Absolutely. Folks, we went deep today, but there's even more in the full transcript. We encourage you to read it. Stay optimistic. The numbers look good. The golden age is here. Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive.
See you next time.